Just coming off of having a snickerdoodle cookie. Oh, was that sugar-free? I don't know. Fuck, it was good. Maybe I'll have a little seltzer here, a little bit of the bubbly. You know, speaking of a little bit of the bubbly, got to open this one up with something interesting. You know, and actually, if you follow me on Twitter, you know exactly already what I'm talking about. But, or at least you have an idea. But we live in a time where, you know, a subject that we've brought up, we got a couple of great questions to get into. In fact, one that I've been trying to get to for a couple of weeks now, we'll finally get to this week. But something that we've been discussing on Wednesday Q&As, which welcome to your Zomia ONE Underground Wednesday Q&A. Boy, that's a fucking mouthful. So am I. But something that we've been talking about is how entertainment is dead. And, you know, I don't think enough people look into the history. And I don't just mean like most people think of, you know, maybe they go into the 1980s with this. Maybe they'll go into the 1970s, like with Bruno Sammartino. Maybe they'll go into the 60s or something like that. You know, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, you know, go down the list. Maybe you'd look that far. But I don't think people really look at the incredibly long history of professional wrestling. Not sports entertainment, professional wrestling, for fuck's sake. And I don't think they realize, like, just how consistent, trend-setting, and readily popular it has always been. And we're talking on the order of, quite frankly, well, I guess now, almost centuries. And I don't think people pay enough attention to that. And the sad part is that with all the complaining about entertainment that I have been doing as late, and I admit, I've been doing plenty. Not to say there isn't good new shit coming out. I mean, we, you know, did a review. Ellen and I went and saw Rambo, the latest Rambo film, Rambo Last Blood. You know, enjoyed the hell out of that. I mean, you know, there's new stuff coming out. The new Terminator movie looks like it's going to be pretty good. Of course, I thought Terminator Genesis was a great movie, but whatever. But as much as I complain about stuff, and again, there's plenty to complain about. Holy shit. Wait until, because you are going to get it. No matter what, you're going to get a Sovereign Trek this month. I'd love for there to be 2, but you're going to get at least 1. And I have a lot to talk about in that, especially those new short treks, or what I'm probably going to start calling shit treks, because that's what they are. Even though, you know, I initially kind of liked them. I mean, like, the ones that they did for Discovery were in many ways better than the episodes of Discovery, probably because they weren't trying to, like, cram so much bullshit into it. But whatever. And to say nothing, well, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I can't wait to share my review with you of the novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It could be an episode on its own, because this is such a brilliant piece of science fiction, one that I've read in the past, but I guess, you know, it's been a while. Like, I mean, I was a teenager last time, so now I have a lot more knowledge, and now when I go through that book and there's certain things that I read and I go, holy fuck, like, wait, what did he just say? You know, and that's written by Gene Roddenberry. But anyway, you know, as much as I complain about all that, and certainly there was a time where for, you know, paid for content, I was talking about, and this would have been a couple of years ago, but I was talking about potentially doing like a wrestling show or a regular wrestling review. But the fact of the matter is that WWE, which was, past tense, for many years was the only game in town, I just couldn't stand it. And I talked about this. I had somebody actually ask me recently, too, if I would do a wrestling show on Zomia ONE. And I was like, no, not for the WWE, no way. Because it's just, it's so bad. I mean, there's a couple cool things going on, but even those get ruined, right? Like, you know, the shit going on with the man, and you know who I'm talking about, Becky Lynch. And then what? She's getting married to Seth Rollins and all. Horseshit. It's horseshit. They're not giving Charlotte her due. I mean, it's just, you know, what the fuck happened to, to Bobby Roode. whatever. I just can't do it. Can't do it. But that said, just in the past couple weeks, it has become the most exciting time since, in my opinion, the 90s, which was the last time we actually had real competition in wrestling. It has become the most exciting time to be a wrestling fan because not only do you get, I mean, you know, if you happen to like what the WWE is doing, which apparently a lot of fans don't, but if you happen to like it, you get to go watch the WWE. Now, granted, it's funny, Bischoff got fired from SmackDown and all, oh boy. Things could get interesting after this ends up getting released. What is this, Wednesday night? So it's October 16th. One of the things I'm going to be talking about, they could do a very powerful episode tonight, and I don't know if they will, but we'll find out. So the reason it's such an exciting time is that if you're into WWE, what they're doing, I have a hard time believing it, but okay, fine. You can go enjoy what WWE is doing. Or NXT is on television now, right? That's on USA. Of course, that's still WWE and still kind of falls under having to please investors. But now you have the return of professional wrestling to TNT, to the network, to the Turner Network, TNT, with AEW, All Elite Wrestling, which they are going to be 3 episodes deep come the night of this recording. And the first 2 episodes that I saw, I was like, oh, that's some damn fine wrestling you've got there. And huge presentation. I mean, in many ways, it looks like they just picked right up where Monday Night Nitro from WCW left off when it went off the air on TNT in 2001. I mean, Mike Tenay's there. You've got Jim Ross. I mean, I'm there just to even listen to the banter. And there's another guy, Excalibur, but I mean, so it's a 3-person, which, you know, that's what, I mean, WWE does that now too, but WCW is well known for having the 3-person broadcast team. But I'm really just there to listen to Jim Ross. Did I say Mike Tenay? I meant Tony Schiavone. I'm there to listen to Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone go to town, you know, and just talk this stuff up. And Chris Jericho's fucking amazing. I mean, both as a wrestler and, frankly, a literal rock star with his band Fozzy, which he came in at Album of the Week this year as well. But anyway, or wait, was that this year? No, that was last year. Whatever. Regardless, Judas, great album. So you've got AEW, which is a fine presentation. You've got American Nightmare Cody Rhodes there and everything running it, and he's doing a hell of a job. And then you've got out of nowhere, and this just blew my mind, and I'm trying to even remember where the hell I even caught it. Maybe YouTube just like suggested it when I was watching AEW Dark, which is their, what, you know, where they show dark matches, which I'm not going to get into the, like, what a dark match is basically a match that's had at an event when you go to it live, but it doesn't get aired on TV, and oftentimes promotions like the WWE has done this in the past, or AEW will take those matches to give, you know, the people that go there live a value add, and then but turn that into another show. And in this case, it's called AEW Dark, and it's on YouTube. So you can watch AEW, but then after, I think it was during when I was watching AEW Dark, YouTube suggested NWA Power. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? I mean, I know what the NWA is, National Wrestling Alliance. Of course I know what the NWA is. The NWA was the WWE's competition, particularly in the 80s, okay? Because it was a series of different promotions that kind of came together, or a group of different promotions. This is like the territory era. I could give you a whole wrestling history. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you want here. But maybe for the best perspective, the NWA is where Ric Flair basically started off, and where, if you ever heard the name Harley Race, a lot of those guys were, you know, Wahoo McDaniels and all them, you know, they were all NWA guys. Now, eventually the NWA would more or less morph into what was WCCW, anyway, something like that. It wasn't WCW, but originally had a longer name. But that would eventually morph into WCW, okay, which is why Ric Flair and Sting and all of them were so well known there. But the NWA would branch then away from, basically, it would still be an independent body away from the WCW, when WCW and WWE were going to head. NWA still existed. The NWA title still existed. It was still a thing. Now, you can have a lot of people that would come out and say that it ended up becoming meaningless once the WCW title became a thing. But, you know, I mean, that's I suppose that's up to perspective. But right now, I mean, I think that belt has way more historical precedence than just about any belt out there right now. It's certainly, and that's not to knock AEW. Okay, and look, I know Ring of Honor's out there, and I know TNA's kind of still out there, I guess, and those two promotions certainly had their day in the sun, but they were really, in many ways, just being WWE. Okay, so when there was the competition between WWE, Ring of Honor, and TNA, and this would be throughout the later aughts and maybe the early 2010s. Okay, everybody was just copying the WWE. The difference now. Okay, now, so to understand, the NWA has still been around. There have still been NWA champions. There is an NWA champion now, and they are doing a show called NWA Power, and that's Power with 3 R's at the end. And the champ right now, who's holding what's been historically called the 10 pounds of gold, that being the original, more or less the original NWA title, a world heavyweight title. There's also a national title. There's a women's title. There's a tag team title. They have all that. But right now, it's Nick Aldis, who you might remember from TNA, who had a pretty good run in the tag team division there, and actually is one of, and I think he's a British guy. What's his nickname's the National Treasure, Nick Aldis. I think he's got a great look. His accent gives him a lot of credibility as a champion because it makes him seem, you know, like a bit of a cut above, right? I mean, just, you know, this is the nature of wrestling, is that it runs off of a degree of stereotyping or typecasting. Okay. And I think Nick Aldis has a tremendous look. He can talk. He sure as fuck can wrestle. There were 2 episodes deep with NWA Power. I've shared both of them on my Twitter channel, and I'll share them every time they come out because I love this. Okay. But basically with NWA Power, I mean, you've got a guy who, I was going to say, in TNA, who, and yes, wrestling's fake, folks, or should I love this, because actually the guy running NWA Power is none other than Jim Cornette. And if you're into wrestling, you know that name very well. A guy who knows more than a thing or two about professional wrestling. But as he would say, it's not fake, it's more staged, or it has a predetermined outcome. But Nick Aldis is one of 2 people who has the distinction of submitting Sting, who's one of the biggest wrestlers of all time. So it's a great guy to have, you know, holding or what they used to call in the NWA, what they called Sweet Charlotte. That was the name of the title. I love that. But the 10 pounds of gold. And he's doing a hell of a job. And again, he looks fantastic, and they're cutting great promos. Because here's the thing with NWA Power. I promise we're going to get into questions. I know I have some wrestling fans here. Because when I did some wrestling reviews, you guys responded, gals, and Z's responded like there's no tomorrow. Okay. I mean, there wasn't like a substantial amount, but I know there's some of you out there, and I like to provide a little bit of something for everybody. So here we go. So with NWA Power, they are making it look just like a classic 80s NWA, back when wrestling was on TBS and only came out of Georgia, and TBS, which is now, you know, one of the biggest cable networks out there, but was originally just, I mean, not exactly a local show, but more or less a local show. But they're doing it. It's in studio. Okay. They're not going to venues. Obviously, this isn't an expensive proposition at all. They're doing it as inexpensively as they can. It's not on any networks, okay? It's to where AEW's on TNT, right? Picking up again where seemingly WCW left off, almost 20 years ago now. But, NWA Power is just doing it the really guerrilla fashion, okay? Where they are, now I mean, NWA wrestlers wrestle all around the world, wherever anybody needs them and wherever anybody wants to put on a good show, but for them to show up here, and these guys are solid. Some of them are also other ex-TNA guys like James Storm, who had a great run, if you remember, with Beer Money. It was him and Bobby Roode, which I thought was a tremendous tag team. And they had, what was her name? The black gal. She was great. Anyway, that was a ton of fun. But he's in there. He's the national champion. And I mean, and they've got a women's division. They've got the whole thing. The tag teams look very exciting. In fact, Mr. Kennedy, or who's now Mr. Anderson, Ken Anderson, he came out. They've got a great little lineup. and some of these guys and some young blood coming up that look really, really slick. And then guys that have been around like Tim Storm and some others. And they're putting on, again, it looks like something straight out of the 80s. In fact, it opens up with Dawkins Into the Fire. It's fucking awesome to hear that song on like a new production. Because that's a kick-ass Doc. I mean, I love Dawkins. But yeah, I mean, they're and even like they know what they're doing. Okay. Like they recognize they're dressing everybody up kind of old fashioned. As far as the announce teams go, and Jim Cornette's doing the announcing and everything, and they're actually calling holds. Holy fuck, how great is that? Instead of just saying, oh my God, and all this whatever. Like, they're actually calling moves, right? Like, that's how you can actually learn how professional wrestling works, is because the announcers can teach you just by you listening to them. And, like they'll have the interview guys and they're all, wearing like classic blazers and everything. I mean, they know what they're doing. They know what they're appealing to, but it's fucking brilliant. And it's amazing to watch today. And so both AEW, which is doing closer to what WWE does presentation style, but being very extreme, and very quote unquote, no holds barred, if you will, which is actually a wrestling term, but I don't mean that literally. And then you have NWA Power, which is presenting a classic style of wrestling with the uncensored nature that came with. The kind of things and the kind of action and storylines that made like the Four Horsemen and Ric Flair a huge deal, or, even Legion of Doom. I mean, go down the list. So you really have three very distinct wrestling products right now. As to where when it was WWE versus TNA versus Ring of Honor, they weren't distinct. They were all kind of trying to do the same thing. But now WWE is basically strangleheld by investors. So they have to please people that probably don't understand or give a fuck about wrestling, which that's why it sucks. They have to do that. They have to deal with that. And then they got to please the kids, right? Because that's how you please investors. But then you have AEW, which is more like, I mean, it's what WCW left off as, but then also more of that extreme attitude era-esque wrestling that we knew from the 90s, right, during the Monday Night Wars. And then you have NWA Power, which is coming out just like something right out of the 1980s. So each thing is very distinct, and you have real choice finally, which you haven't had in 20 years. You have, hell, I'd say longer than that. You have real choice in what kind of wrestling you want to watch. And it's pretty fucking amazing that, I mean, and it was actually very important for me, or is very beneficial for me, because folks, like I'm almost in a fit of depression over the entertainment industry right now, because it's so fucking horrible. People are so, I mean, nobody can be creative. I mean, there's so many problems with this, and much of that has to do with IP law. We know that. Yeah, it's bad. Anyway, I'll probably talk a lot more about this in an upcoming Sovereign Trek, or if you want to ask me questions, I can talk about it. But boy, I mean, another thing too is that I know a lot of people have dropped off of being wrestling fans because the WWE just jumped the fucking shark. Come on back. Because AEW, and I like NWA Power even more. I like that 80s style. Go watch you some NWA Power. It's only on YouTube and Facebook Watch. Obviously, I don't recommend watching it on Facebook Watch, but it's on YouTube there. Check it out and share it around. I just think it's so fucking awesome. I think Nick Aldis is a tremendous champion. He looks like a champion. I mean, I love Jericho, but like some of these guys are letting and I know they're old. But some of these guys are letting their bodies go, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I like somebody that takes it really seriously. I'm not knocking Jericho. I know how brilliant Jericho is. He's fucking hilarious. The guy can own the internet. He can literally own the internet to the point that even you'd say the guy that owns entertainment right now, that being The Rock gives props to Chris Jericho. You understand? I mean, and they're not even like, Jericho's not even in the WWE. He's working for the enemy. That's how big of a deal it is. Rock also commented on NWA Power and said that, like, wow, did he love the vintage feel of it and everything. I mean, I think it's fucking great. So great time to be a wrestling fan. Go ahead and check that out. Now, let us get into our questions. I've got at least 2 lined up, and I only did 2 because I wanted to make sure that we could get into a big one that got asked a couple weeks ago. But here we go. Dr. S. I like that. Dr. S. I know you're a fan of the Trezor Model T. Your review of it when it came out was brilliant and convinced me to give it a go. You're welcome, and bravo. I still love mine and use it all the time. And I wonder what you thought about the recent BTC-only firmware. Is this a sign of the death of shitcoins or what? Hey. All right, I'm not gonna go that far to say like that this is the death of shitcoins. I do think Trezor is a small company, a brilliant company, no doubt. I trust their developers, I trust their designers, I trust their product. When, very clear, and I made this point over and over again when I reviewed the Model T when it first came out, when you buy it directly from Trezor, do not, here's a little side comment on this, do not trust what you're buying on Amazon. You know, in fact, you can't trust what you're buying on Amazon. The lead guy over at No Starch Press, which I regularly get books from, and I read. I mean, I get access to so much great cryptographic papers and stuff from them. I mean, they are doing the Dark Lord's work in this world. I mean, I don't even want to know where we'd be without No Starch Press. They are so fucking great. You know, they do Linux books and cryptography books and everything. I mean, they're dynamite. I have quite a library from them. No Starch Press called out Amazon for shipping what are, I mean, now granted, they're kind of engaging in some IP law here, even though I know they're very loose on that. So we're going to kind of forgive them on this. But I understand, but I mean, I think they have a greater point that they're getting at, and the greater point has to do with quality, which they have a point to make there. What's happening is that people are buying copies, say like, here's one of their best books, and I'm just looking at it on my shelf, Serious Cryptography, Practical Introduction to Modern Encryption, tremendous book. You will buy that book. Say you went and bought that on Amazon. If you but then you bought another copy from No Starch Press. If you put the copy you got from Amazon and the copy you got from No Starch Press, the page counts could be different. The size of the book is physically different, and there is an issue with the binding. So what's happening is, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that this is going on, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's a bad thing, but when you're No Starch Press and you're like this really indie publisher, you do hang your hat on the quality of what you deliver. And I could understand where they have a concern that people are getting shitty books from them, because, I mean, when you buy from No Starch Press, often enough, you're buying reference guides that are meant to last you decades. Here, another book right on my shelf. I'm looking at it. The Book of IRC. That book's from like 30 years ago, or like 20, 25 years ago or so. This is it's my copy. It's a very, very old book. And it's still, I mean, it's in tremendous shape. And I used the fuck out of that book over the years, over the decades, you understand. So I can understand where they have a concern. Hey, people are getting shitty quality from us, and that's going to speak bad on our brand. Now, ultimately, are they concerned about losing sales? Yeah, I can kind of get that. And if they want to pull some IP, fine. But as far as I know, they're not calling the lawyers. They're just saying, hey, Amazon, like, this is a problem because people are getting shitty copies of our books. And that's the right way to do it. Of course, you know, not to enforce law or the butt of the gun, but to just like, you know, call out customer service on this and see if something can be done there. But that's my point that I'm making here. The overall point is that Amazon has gotten to the point where it is so large. You know, this is something we've talked about many times on Sovereign Tech. It came really to head, which you'd think this is unrelated, but it's not. It came really to head with the Sony Pictures leak from a few years ago. And the point that I and other security researchers made was that, look, when a company gets to a certain size, like, it's unmanageable. You really can't. Like, and it's certainly, you can't secure it. Okay, but you're going to have leaks in the boat when you get to a certain size. In fact, the boat might be a great analogy because, you know, well, anyway, but I'm not going to go there. But that's the thing, is that Amazon is just out of control as far as what they ship you. Like, you don't know if you're going to get like the real deal. Like, if you order something Dolce & Gabbana, you could end up getting, you know, a knockoff. right? And that's the deal, is that you're getting knockoffs. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin hardware or crypto hardware, that's a problem, because that knockoff could have some kind of chip in it that could, keylog or, basically own your ass, right? Or it could have custom firmware on it that, could cause steal your private keys. Cause all kinds of problems, steal your Bitcoin ultimately. And that's why I said you got to make sure you're buying from Trezor. Now, could something be man in the middle in shipping? You know what I mean? Where like it gets intercepted by whatever organization and then it ends up getting shipped off to you. That's a possibility. And there's certainly a conversation to be had around having, especially when it comes to things that are this mission critical, like say a hardware wallet for your crypto, of, being very, like maybe having someone else unrelated to you ordering that for you or something like that, to where you obfuscate that it's going to you. Because if you've got a name, you could be in some kind of, who knows, who knows? So that's why, at the very least, you want to make sure you're buying straight from Trezor when you do this sort of thing. Okay. Because you can't trust what you're finding on Amazon. Now, so I kind of forget how we got on that. But regardless, okay, it would appear that the market, to get to the point about shitcoins dying, it would appear that the market is speaking and that there is heavy desire for this Bitcoin-only firmware, which is available now as of version 2.16. And I forget the version because the Trezor ONE can also do Bitcoin only. But you have to, it's new firmware that you have to install, but you go for it and there you go. And that's all it is. Instead of having your, Zcash, and now there's so many currencies that the Trezor wallet supports now. Instead of having all those come up, it'll just be Bitcoin and just BTC. No Bitcoin Cash, none of that. Now, here's where I think things get interesting, and is part of what I think is going on. Just part of it. As with all things in life, there's never just one reason. Okay, there's always a multitude of reasons. I like to think there's at least always three ways and probably at least always three reasons for something. But there's never just one, regardless. And part of what I think the demand for this is that, look, in my opinion, and it ain't just mine, the Trezor hardware wallets, just hardware wallets in the abstract, are the premier way to secure your crypto. Okay? It is the premier way to secure your cryptocurrencies. Anybody, any researcher, any, blockchain specialist, I guess those are a thing, whatever that are out there, anybody worth their salt's going to tell you that. You could do a hybrid thing like I've recommended, where actually you just take like an old Android device and you cut off all the radios on it and you more or less turn that into a hardware wallet. It's still basically the hardware wallet in an abstract. As far as the production model hardware wallets out there, I think Trezor is very much the, pick your high-end car company, is the Rolls Royce. Okay, it is the top of the heap. So I think a lot of people that have a lot of crypto use a Trezor, okay, and have been using them for some time, or maybe they jumped on the Model T, whatever. Now, a lot of those people that have a lot of crypto probably are, they're Bitcoin bulls, and maybe, they're really, really big on Bitcoin. I can understand that. And maybe some of these people are ones that play by the rules to some degree. And what I mean by that is that they declare their crypto holdings, to the IRS, okay, or to whatever government they have around the world. And while I'd say don't do that, but that's just me speaking as an anarchist. I get it. And I think what's happening for a lot of these people, and this is a danger that I didn't bring up and I should have brought up when Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin up my ass, Bitcoin turn it sideways. I mean, whatever the fuck, names they come up for with these things now. Bitcoin Dark, wasn't that one of them? Here's the problem. Now, when they do snapshots and fork away, like Bitcoin Cash did and so on, meaning that when you have, if you have 3 Bitcoin, when Bitcoin Cash started, if you had 3 Bitcoin in your, on the Bitcoin blockchain, you also ended up automatically having 3 Bitcoin Cash. Okay? Or BCH, whatever. Or Bcash, that's my favorite thing to call it. And here's the rub, and here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people considered. I didn't consider it right away, and it's a point that should be brought up often. And that is there is the potential. Granted, it would take a lot more understanding of this technology than it appears most governments really grasp. But there's the potential, and maybe even retroactively, that your Bitcoin wallet, even though maybe you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you don't care about Bitcoin Cash, you don't care about, I don't even think Bitcoin Gold's still a thing, you don't care about the alternative Bitcoins that forked off, whatever, and they might as well fucked off, but you don't care about any of that. But because technically, as in technologically, your Bitcoin is also Bitcoin Cash, the US government could tax you, or whatever government could tax you, for holding something you don't really give a shit about. And it's entirely because, perhaps of like the fact that your wallet could potentially, be a Bitcoin Cash wallet or whatever. I mean, this is just a possibility. I'm not saying that this is the reality. I'm just saying that this could really be a thing. So, going forward, having a hardware wallet, the premier way to store your Bitcoin, your crypto, but in this case, Bitcoin, and having it be Bitcoin only would be a way of mitigating. I mean, you still have, the history since Bitcoin Cash has been around, but you get my point. It'd be a way, though, of mitigating, perhaps from here on out, of not being able to get taxed for any future, Bitcoin forks. Because you'd say, oh, no. My wallet is Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. It is a hardware wallet, and that's all it fucking does. And I think that it's a weird realm that we're in, but I really, really think that might be a part of why this is happening. But then also, let's call it, the altcoins are not doing well. They're not doing fucking well at all. And so there's a lot of people who have, because of that lack of performance, have said, yeah, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, or at the very least, Bitcoin's the only game in town right now. And frankly, I don't even want to, touch or deal with the rest of that stuff. I want my Cadillac to run on, I don't know, whatever, leaded gas, and that's all. And so thus you have a Trezor that it has Bitcoin only firmware. That's just one possibility of why I think that's a thing. I imagine that, on, other reasons being a nice clean code base where you're not injecting what people might consider, bullshit into it. I think that that's a fine reason as well. And overall, it just makes a statement. When you say, yes, my Trezor, oh no, this only does Bitcoin. There's, I guess it's like wearing Armani or something, whatever. There's a million analogies you could come up with for that. But I have tested the firmware, and there's not necessarily anything special about it, but it just works, and it just does Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, and hey, rock and roll. There's obviously a market for that. Otherwise, and there's obviously demand, which is the market, but there's obviously demand because otherwise Trezor, they don't have the people to do this, to like waste time on something frivolous, on something that nobody would want, and also I think, just on their part, it's also a great marketing move because it's a differentiator from just about everybody else who's trying to add in more and more cryptocurrencies into their thing. And Trezor just comes out and says, no, we do this one, and we do this one thing well, You know, I mean, like there's really something to that, and that's a bit of a lost art in technology today. I mean, to some degree, it's coming back like this, but anyway. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the end of shitcoins, but I do think it. I do see it at the very least as a defensive measure, and as something that there's definitely a market for, and a sizable and affluent one. Like I really, really do, and so I got to respect that. People that have that attitude, and bravo. Like my hat, I'm wearing my hat right now. Hats off to Trezor for putting that out there, because it makes a statement for them too, like I said. So anyway, okay, I want to get into let's shift things up. We're going to talk music now, not album of the week. We're going to get into album of the week. In fact, it's one that just once again adds into the fact that 2019 is one of the greatest years in music history ever, of all time. It just is. Unbelievable things coming out this year. In fact, something I might get to at some point here in 2019. There's even a new David Hasselhoff album, for fuck's sake. Can you believe that? Amazing. Some of the artists, don't laugh. Go look up, see who's playing with him on that. It'll blow your mind. Some big, big names on that album. But certainly we got an album in 2019 that, much like the Lee Aaron album that it was a live album, but I didn't fucking see that coming. Much like that, this is one that and it's not a live album, it's a new album, all new music that I just did not see coming. Like, I just didn't expect this guy to pick up on this stuff. And it's kind of perfect because we've done album of the weeks for this guy in the past. In fact, rare albums that I had to purchase, because there's just no other way to get them. But anyway, so let's go to this. Well, here, I'm going to, let me read the question first, and then we'll go to the story. Hey, Doc, I know you're a big fan of metal, and maybe this would be a nice lead into your album of the week, but I saw this album of the week isn't exactly metal, but whatever, that's fine. But I saw this quote from Pete Townsend of The Who, that he said, "The guitar is literally exhausted. I think you've said in the past that music has a finite amount of permutations that it can be played. That's how it reads, that it can be played and music will eventually die. Do you think this is a hint of that? Here's the link to the story I could find. Keep rocking anyways, man of tomorrow." Woo. Thank you. So, okay, I don't think I've ever said music will die, because you're still going to have however many centuries of music, or technically thousands of years if you want to toss in some bone flutes. But I didn't say skin flutes. Calm down. But yeah, there has to be, the point that I've made in the past is that there has to be a point where music really does, it starts, because you can say, well, you can make it different lengths, and then technically it's not the same song because this one's 3 minutes and that one's 6 minutes, even though they sound exactly fucking the same. And so if people want to be that kind of asshat pedantic, fine. Okay. But then if we're going to get into the world of 2-hour songs, yeah, I know they're all over YouTube. If we're going to get into that world, that's certainly not the music industry as we understand it today. Even though the music industry as we understand it today certainly isn't about making good music. It never was. But regardless, so I've never really said music will die. I've just said that there will come a time, like you only have so many instruments, and mathematically you only have so many notes, and you can only put them together in so many ways that eventually you end up with the same song, or something along those lines. Originality starts to go out the window. Now, can we make new instruments? Sure. In fact, I mentioned Star Trek the Motion Picture earlier, right? Like, was it the blaster beam? That was the sound that V'ger makes, where it's like, and that eventually I think they'd even use for the Borg in later movies. Okay? That was an instrument developed by Jerry Goldsmith. Greatest musician of all time. For what he does. That was a new instrument that he built that created new music. So sure, we can make new instruments and blah, 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 but I think you get my gist of what I mean by this. And Pete Townsend, who absolute legend, especially in the guitar world, he had something to say in this vein. So, but for clarity on what I've said in the past, I didn't say music would die. I just said there's a point where, and the music industry has already, I think, really reached that. Maybe that's what Pete Townsend's talking about, but there's a point where things are just going to start sounding the same. But let's not give up hope yet. Anyway, and let's read. This is from October 1st, 2019. The article that was shared with me is from Loudwire, and it's The Who's Pete Townsend. Says, the guitar's possibilities have been literally exhausted. So let me read a little bit. Does the guitar have anywhere left to go as an instrument? The Who guitarist Pete Townsend recently made an interesting argument that its musical possibilities may indeed be depleted. Surely it can't be that simple, however. But as reported by Ultimate Classic Rock, the legendary rocker indicated that highly skilled guitarists, such as those found online, have felt little or have left little in the way of creative avenues for other players to explore. However, when asked for his thoughts on rock music's waning popularity, Townsend indicated that rock itself isn't dead, yet he proposed the idea that rock's dependence on guitar may be over. Stanley, breaking in for a second. Before we read Pete Townsend's quotes, this idea that, like everybody that's online is, just putting out all this amazing stuff, kind of proves that what I was saying to some degree, in that, like, anything that can be done with the guitar as an instrument has been done. Why? Because we live in the world as, we live in the world as, and I've talked about this on the Hard and Fast podcast. We live in a world where anybody can make music. Now, that is a two-edged sword, because the great thing about today is that anybody can make music and get it out there. The bad news is that anybody can make music and put it out there. There's no filter as to whether it's shit or not. Like, to some degree, there used to be a filter around that with the music industry, and whatever else. And it wasn't, but it's not that simple, because people are like, well, isn't it great that the filter's gone from the music industry, because who knows what music they said no to that might have been awesome to somebody. It's not that simple. It's not, the music industry didn't just create a filter. It wasn't just a filter. It was also very much a safety net, meaning that you could have drummers, guitarists, singers who made millions of dollars a piece that could make a living doing only one thing, being a drummer, not just making great music. No. He could make $1 million just being a fucking drummer. And when you have that kind of, nest egg under you, when you have that kind of money and you're not worried about the bills and everything, I mean, you're allowed to creatively flourish so much more. And to only play the drums, I mean, you can become the greatest drummer ever because of that, and you can just take all your skills to new heights. So I'm not praising the music industry, but it's not as simple. We can't just simply say, fuck, it's great that the music industry, doesn't have the reins around music anymore. Ooh. Yeah. That argument is not that simple. It really isn't. So anyway, let's carry on here, reading the Pete Townsend thing. But yeah, I mean, so now that everybody can make music, everybody's, the amount of music that's possible to get made is being blown through at an exponential rate. That's me saying that. But anyway, let's read here from Pete Townsend. Quote, "The guitar may be losing ground, but in part that's because if you spend an hour on Instagram or YouTube, you will quickly discover unknown people playing the guitar the way a great orchestral violinist like Yehudi, I don't know the name, Menuhin, once might have played his instrument," end quote, Townsend told the Dallas Morning News last week. Quote, "These are virtuosos of the highest order. They can tread like Eddie Van Halen or play jazz like John McLaughlin," end quote. He continued, quote, "They've literally exhausted the possibilities of the guitar," end quote. Rock music's declining popularity of late has been covered at length. Indeed, in an era when rap groups are winning rock awards and certain rock stars are debating hip-hop's place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, many fans have been left to wonder what will become of rock as a whole. But Townsend offered his unique insight into the matter. He posited that artistic prowess doesn't discriminate against different types of music. Quote, "This kind of virtuosity is already happening with beatbox-based rap and with laptop-supported pop. Everything will change again, maybe faster than it did for guitar music. Who knows?" End quote, Townsend said. Not that it's necessarily a surprising sentiment from the forward-thinking guitarist who helped define a generation with his guitar-smashing theatrics, but the Who member talked of his own work's aim in outstripping notions of guy with a guitar mundanity. To wit, the musician seemingly aspires to be more like other genre-challenging artists. Townsend clarified, quote, "Hip-hop is rock to my ears. Music for the neighborhood, the street, the disenfranchised, the downtrodden, the young, the ignored. That used to be what I focused on. Now I try to write real operas and want my stage work to be like art installations. And why not? Kanye West has been doing the same thing," end quote. Hey, So I was with Pete up until that last bit, okay? I mean, are the streets really, and seriously, for most people, are the streets hookers and blow and like cash raining from the sky and all this other crap? I know that there's plenty of hip hop and rap and whatever else that's actually about, like, you know, quote unquote real shit. Okay, I understand that. But the bulk of, certainly, like Kanye West, and I can say this, I want to be very careful how I say this because this person was under an NDA. I'll just say this. I know someone who had to work with Kanye West and his wife. I consider this person a friend. On a project. Not going to say what kind of project. And he told me, and this is a guy this guy is just one of the nicest fucking people I've ever met. All into positive psychology and everything. I mean, he's just a super upbeat, nice guy. And he was telling me about like his interactions. And this is a few years ago. And he says, Brian, you don't understand. These people are literally, they are, you know, talk about literally, they are completely out of touch with reality. Like they don't, you know, and so for Pete Townsend to say, oh, well, Kanye West is, well, maybe he's saying Kanye West is putting like art illustrations out there or installations out there, you know, on stage. Okay, maybe. But I mean, he sure as fuck ain't singing the street, right? Yeah, I mean, look, you like hip hop and rap, fine. You know, rock and go for it. That's I was going to say rock and roll of all ironies. Go for it. It's not rock. Okay, I mean, it's just not. And look, I dig it. I get what NWA, sorry, not NWA. I get what Run DMC did with Aerosmith, you know, with Walk This Way and all that and blah blah blah. Like I understand. I don't know that many people who feel like that. No, I mean, I've heard plenty of music commentators say that, oh, that changed everything, that broke down all the walls, that blah blah blah. I don't know how many people are feeling that change right now, but, you know, feeling like good about that, or that necessarily needs to be a thing, but whatever. To speak to the larger point about the guitar, and I guess I'll hone in on this because it's such a big conversation. I mean, look, folks, I don't care what kind of music you like, and I'm glad that there's a multitude of different types of music out there. I think that's wonderful. The only thing I have a hard time ever talking comfortably about is country. But everything else, hey, great, you know. But let's stick, okay? let's stick with Pete Townsend's. Yeah, look, I guess what I was just going to say about the hip hop thing. Let me wrap that up. It's just quite simply, I don't feel like the hip hop I hear in all this has nothing to do with, you know, the disenfranchised in the street. Quite the opposite. In fact, it's not rebellious at all. It has to do with buying into the system as is. And it's, frankly, degrading and insulting to men and women. It's horrible. And and folks, before you think I have a problem with gals, you know, whatever, in a music video, you know, shaking their butts and tits and everything like that, do you realize who you're listening to? It's me. I mean, I had somebody years ago, like, they emailed me, they called me Captain Sex. Like, I have no problem with this. You understand? That's not, I'm just saying, let's be clear here. That kind of shit that's in those music videos and whatever else are getting sung about is not the reality of the situation. And half the time, hip hop stars are just singing about themselves, or like Kid Rock or P. Diddy or whatever. And I mean, and what could they possibly be saying about the disenfranchised if all they're doing is blowing smoke up their own asses? Rock's about being rebellious. Yeah, it's about empowering yourself, but it's not about like empowering. I mean, yeah, the guy makes money who's on stage, but it's not about empowering. Whatever. Anyway, I think that was an asinine statement. But certainly where I think Pete Townsend is an expert is when it comes to guitars. And I think his point has a lot of validity to it. And it does speak to just something that I predicted, not necessarily something I've ever really looked into, which was the comments that the emailer referenced and that I'd, reiterated for you just a few minutes ago. But as far as the death of the guitar, well, here's the rub. And in fact, this year, 2019, has kind of driven this point home, in my opinion. Look, as far as like the guitar being dead and doing everything you could with the guitar, I called that when Dragon Force first came out. It's just like, well, that's it. We don't get any higher than that, folks. Like that, there's your pinnacle. As great as Chris and Pelletieri and whoever else can be, and I love them. There it is. But this year you had that tremendous album, and it's still as many great albums, and have they been great? Yes, they have. As many great metal albums alone, just metal, that have come out this year in 2019. Still the number one album, and I guarantee it's going to ride this year out, and it's not any bias of mine. It's just a fact. The greatest album this year, and I'm going to chalk it up as one of the greatest albums of all time, is Beast in Black's From Hell with Love. This is, let's be very clear here when you go and listen to that. And I know a lot of you did. You emailed me and you told me how amazing it was, and you're glad I introduced you to it, and you're welcome. This album does not rely, the guitar's there, but it isn't center stage. It's sharing the stage very well, but it's not center stage. There's a lot of synth, a lot of dance beat, a lot of this kind of stuff in it that also bands like Amaranth and even Battle Beast, which Beast in Black spun out of. Those bands also experiment with putting like more of this like dance poppy kind of stuff, and mixing it in with, with your high metal vocals or even your more death metal grunts and a really, really heavy riffs. And so I think Pete Townsend has a point. Rock isn't dead. Sure, the guitar, maybe you have exhausted much of what the guitar can do, but then you just mix in other things in with the guitar and you end up with great music. And you end up with, like I said, look, if you asked me 5 years ago, if you said to me, look, you don't understand, in 2019, an album is going to come out that you, the Golden Stallion, a guy who it is almost impossible to please, and it is, you are going to hear an album that you will play as much as you've played any album. It's going to rank in your pantheon. It could even end up in the top 3 greatest albums of all time, in your opinion. Of all time. If you told me that 5 years ago, I would have told you to go shit yourself. That's not possible, because the great stuff, there's still great stuff coming out, but the truly great stuff has just long been done. We're not going to get another Thriller. We're not getting another, Back in Black. We're not getting whatever, okay? Oh, how wrong I'd be. Because From Hell with Love is a tremendous album, and it is a metal album through and through. Okay? And it's got all the stylings, all the trappings. They are a metal band. And, but you toss in, some of this synth, and man, it turns into a whole, not another genre, but it turns into a whole other level of music. So the guitar doesn't have to be center stage in rock and roll. It's got to be there. It ain't real. What's the old Hinder saying, right? It's not real music without guitar or something like that, or it ain't rock and roll without guitar. Yeah, that's true. But that's really all you kind of need. Everything else is up to, is up to debate as far as what you could toss in. And I've said this for years with metal, is that it is the one genre of music that you can implement every other genre of music and it works, and it's a cohesive song. Okay, if you put an electric guitar, and look, I know Big and Rich kind of did this, but if you put an electric guitar and make it even close to sharing the stage in a country song, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to say, well, that ain't country. And I'm with you. However, you could do like Devin Townsend did with Synkestra, and you have the song Triumph, and right in the middle of it, you have a hillbilly hoedown, and it just makes sense. It's like, oh, well, sure. Why wouldn't you have a banjo playing right now? And I know that gets into bluegrass, but you get it. So, yeah, rock, metal, like, it's not going anywhere because it's the one kind of music where you can add anything in and it will work. Because the metal attitude, the attitude of the music is what stands tall. And is metal, here's something that he's raising an interesting point here. And we'll get this wrapped up because we're coming up on the hour. He's talking about how hip hop is like the music of the street and all. Oh, God, I don't want to get lost on that. You know what I couldn't believe? So I mentioned this, that I was in Geneva recently. And here we are, we're in Switzerland. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country. I mean, as far as presentation, right? Geneva, gorgeous city. Okay. I mean, by any metric you can run off with that. I mean, it really, really is. And when you look into the statistics, okay, of Geneva and Switzerland in general, I mean, it's arguably the wealthiest country in the world. And, what it costs to live there is very high by comparison. And anyway, Ellen and I were walking around and there's guys driving by and you just hear the bass, and they're listening to some, I don't know, some rap or hip hop or something like that. And I just find myself, I turn to her and I'm like, wait, what problems do they have here that has anything to do with supposedly what rap and hip hop came out of in the United States? We are in white Europe Central and this shit's playing here. Clearly it has nothing to do with the street because there ain't no street in Geneva. You understand? I mean, there just is no street. There's no disenfranchised. I know these people walk around. I mean, everybody's just smiling, and wearing Rolex. Okay, they're not all wearing Rolexes, but no, I mean, there's Lake Geneva right there, right? You got these beautiful swans just coming up. You have these boats, they have the world's oldest, they're still steam powered boats that run. They run modern steam engines developed in the early aughts. It's amazing. And all this, and then you're hearing, fuck the hoe. It's wait, what? So I can't, when you tell me that this is the music for the disenfranchised and whatever else, I'm not writing off the legitimate fact that, yes, black people are treated terribly, differently, horribly, go down the list, especially in the United States. Okay. That, so many of these things are very, racism, so many of these other things are very, very real. The impoverishment, all of that, very, very real. And there are very real problems and they need solutions and ones that don't come from the government. Okay. I mean, I totally recognize that. I mean, fuck, last Q&A, I had to, obviously people read this from me because I had to defend how I'm not exactly, I'm not a lefty, but I get how I sound like one. So I get it. But those problems don't exist there. They don't exist in Geneva, the capital of the fucking UN. And yet this is the music that people are listening to there. Holy shit. So my point, I mean, actually, Ellen, you were there. I mean, wasn't that crazy?
It was crazy.
It was crazy. It seemed totally out of place, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a rich white neighborhood.
I mean, the whole city.
Where's the class struggle?
Yeah, we walked the whole city too, and you're right. Where is the struggle? Like there was no struggling going on there, and you can even look at the numbers. Go on Wikipedia and look at the numbers. I mean, it's just not there. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
I just didn't see any poor or violence or anything like that while we were there.
Yeah. So I don't get how that music was speaking to anybody. Like it did. If that is not a place that music would seem to speak to.
And it seemed like a diverse city too. There were a lot of
very diverse
representation of
sure.
a lot of different cultures.
Sure.
It just seemed out of place.
Yeah, didn't make any sense at all. Thank you, Ellen. Anyway, it's just so fucking odd. So now the point that I was going to make here quick is that I don't think metal speaks to like the person on the street, you know, or the disenfranchised or whatever. Okay. Like I don't think it does. I do, but metal does have, or rock does have an attitude of general rebellion against the status quo. Okay. Like, I mean, it just has that. That's why people are so passionate about it. And it always has had that. And, you know, especially when you get into power metal and some other things, like, I mean, it has a very like self-empowering, attitude to it. Okay. Even if it's singing about slaying dragons or something like that, you feel the energy coming off of it. And I mean, that's why, like, for me, it's so great for, you know, if you're working out or whatever. So I'm not saying that I think metal is somehow the superior version of music that speaks to the disenfranchised. I mean, I guess it kind of can, you know, because if you feel left out, metal has a great subculture because it's more than just music. Like, there's an entire culture around it, right? Yeah. So just bringing that out there. I'm not saying like somehow metal's better or does a better job of that, or music with guitar does a better job of that. Quite the opposite. It just has an attitude that attracts a lot of people. And it also has a complexity that I think attracts a lot of the brilliant, you know, a lot of brilliant people. So anyway, yeah, one of those mysteries. Now we're at the hour. So I want to wrap that up. So I hope I answered your question. I just think that the music, and Pete Townsend hit it, that this part he was right on, that the music will just evolve. They'll just add in new music, what I meant to be new musical styles. Notes, you know, not new notes, but yeah, they'll bring in new instruments. They'll bring in all kinds of new elements that will just keep, you know, the guitar will always be there, but it might just end up being in the background, or it might just be there for a solo or something like that. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, in rock, the bass guitar is the most important thing anyway, and there's not a whole lot you're doing with those 4-string. I mean, there is a lot you can do. I'm not knocking bass guitarists. Bass guitarists are usually my favorite people in any given band. I'm not knocking that at all. Okay, I'm just saying that, you know, there it is. But I think the bass is always the backbone, and that's really what you want to make sure is there, because that's the thing that gives you a lot of the feeling, you know. And also in metal, particularly in metal, more so than just like straight rock or hard rock. Well, hard rock would be there too, but the musician, or I mean the singer, the lead singer, and like the highs that they can do and things like this, that's part of the epicness of the music. So in many ways, great music in those genres went above and beyond the guitar already. So there you go. Anyway, okay, that's enough of that. Now, somebody who is certainly a rock artist, though maybe not a rock star, even though he did have a huge hit. In fact, one of his songs, his most popular song, called No Easy Way Out, which you might know from Rocky IV, got covered on that Beast in Black album that I mentioned, From Hell with Love. They did a cover of it, and they did a damn fine job. Who we're talking about is Robert Tepper. Now, we actually covered a few of Robert Tepper's albums in an Album of the Week previously on Wednesday Q&As, because I don't think anybody mentions this guy, and he still has, like, his music outside of No Easy Way Out are like Angel of the City and a bunch of other ones. I mean, there's great songs in those albums. Good luck finding them. In fact, some of them you got to pay a mint on eBay to get your hands on. But I mean, it's great stuff. And out of nowhere, I was on getmetal.club, and they listed it on the same day. I forget everything that was coming out on this day, on the release date, because usually they'll have it like on a Thursday. I think it was Whitesnake did a big deluxe re-release, super deluxe edition, like 6-disc version of Slip of the Tongue. Fuck, is that a great album? And on that day, so I was looking for that. I wanted that, and it's like, okay, it's going to take a little bit to download all 6 discs. I wanted to jump on that. And then I saw right underneath that, there was David Hasselhoff with a new album. I'm like, oh, what? On getmetal.club, mind you. This is a hardcore website. And then under that, not much further down, was Robert Tepper with a new album called Better Than the Rest. Now, what's interesting about that, in fact, actually, I saw somebody put up an album by Roxette. Again, this is getmetal.club. This is all about metal. What's interesting is that a lot of the stuff that I like that kind of sits outside of metal, it's amazing how often it shows up on this website to download. Meaning that there is a thread of, I don't want to say influences, but there seems to be, I feel like there is a common thread among metalheads of what they like outside of metal. Because for Robert Tepper, not a metal musician, this is not a metal album, okay? For Robert Tepper, and in fact, I think like Lindsey Sterling's album ended up on there. I mean, it's just, it's interesting that the things that aren't really metal that will still show up on that site are things that I'm totally into. So there's something there. And I don't know if it's a generational thing. There's something to explore, I think, in that, again, I'm stunned every time it happens because I'm like, I mean, Roxette's fucking awesome, but like, that's weird that somebody would post their like their latest album there, because that doesn't really fit in next to, Meshuggah, right? Or Gojira. Like you just wouldn't put them in the same vein. But then these uploaders do. It's like, oh, okay. And so there's an interesting similar taste that gets built, it seems like, within this genre when that's your first and foremost love. But anyway, yeah, that's just an interesting side note. But yeah, I saw the Robert Tepper album, and it's probably the only way I would have found out about it, because, radio's not going to fucking play it. You're sure as fuck not going to get an announcement about Robert Tepper at the top of Google Play Music or Spotify or go down the fucking list. They're only going to schlep on you, oh, listen to the new Drake, listen to Kanye West, and whatever the other horse shit is out there. I don't know. Never mind. I was going to make a comment about Geneva, but I won't. So, yeah, Robert Tepper, better than the rest. This is, it's a very simple album. It's a good, 12, 14 tracks. It's a good time, though. Certainly you can hear the age in his voice. He's an older guy now. But, I don't know, this is a kind of album that I feel like sort of like a John Cougar Mellencamp, or is it John Mellencamp, or is it John Cougar? Or is it John Mellencamp Cougar? Did he change it again? People that know music know what I'm talking about. But it has that kind of feel, like it has the feel of a style of music that I haven't heard in a while. Where it's kind of a, guy with a guitar singing about, I don't want to say the heartland. It's not fucking country, but it's rock. There's rock. It's rock. But there's just like a saying about, the heart, about, life in general. And but all with this like very basic, background riff that, and I don't say basic as an insult. And yeah, I'm listening to it. I'm like, well, where is this kind of music? Where has this gone? Maybe like some more classic Bryan Adams kind of stuff, which, holy shit, Bryan Adams still didn't even get nominated for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. Joke. What a joke. Ugh. Anyway, so Robert Tepper's new album. I can't really explain it to you. If you bothered, and I hope you did, if you bothered to listen to Robert Tepper's other work, you're not going to hear a song on here like No Easy Way Out. That's just not here. And that's fine. But if you liked the previous stuff that Robert Tepper did, I think you're in for a treat with this. But it sounds like it's coming from somebody who's a little wiser, a little older. And I like it. I don't know. There's something very real. It's music that has, for lack of a better term, soul. And we don't have a lot of that today. And oh boy, I want to make some comments there. But I'm going to bite my tongue. Ouch. And we'll wrap this baby up. This is your Wednesday Q&A for the Zomia ONE Underground only. Thank you to everybody. I know a lot of you transferred over from Patreon to Podbean finally. I am honored by that you did that. Thank you so much. I'm always honored by all the support you show me. Real quick, we do have a new sponsor on with the show. And that is Voltoro. You will, if you're in the Bitcoin space, you might know them very well. We will start running their ads on the next episode of Sovereign Tech coming out this Sunday. Very excited for that. I'm really, really honored by this. So, we're still, advertisers are seeing the value in what Sovereign Tech does. You, in the in the sponsors, you are making this ship float. And I am always, always honored. Okay, because, first off, I enjoy that I can say I'm a professional podcaster because I do make money off of this. But second, but most importantly, I just really appreciate that so many people, both individuals, businesses, and so on, find value in what this show and what Zomia One in general is putting out to the world. That really, really means a lot to me, because otherwise I would just sit in a lazy boy chair probably and just say, oh, fucking fuck, and just like, and just sit there in my own insanity, totally alone. But I don't. I have, there is value in what we're putting out there. And so I'm really, really honored that all of you find that. So, okay, that's it. We really will wrap this one up, and I will see all of you, on the other side.